me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 2020 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series where your man Louie T aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2020 NFL Draft using our brand new grading scale from 5 to 1. Each pick will be assessed a score, 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. We will then tally up each and every single pick's score, divide by the number of selections made by that team in the draft, which will yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer out there, are in total control as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos stating 2 things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Some examples would be Ravens next, Be More next, Baltimore next, ball. You get where I'm going. This, as a matter of fact, the next team up in the series is none other than the Baltimore Ravens. And this draft has been universally praised as one of the better 2020 draft classes put together on paper. Obviously, you got to go out on the field and prove it, but routinely at this time of the year, I'm usually lauding and praising the Baltimore Ravens and showering them with praises for what they've accomplished in the draft. They get it. And I talk about a handful of teams every year, and I feel like a broken record because I say the same thing about Jacksonville, and all for different reasons. For Jacksonville and Dallas and Cincinnati, they just know how to identify talented football players, and they grab them up. And they're not always the most high character guys, the guys that you want in the locker room necessarily, but they know how to identify talent, and they usually assemble a really good draft class year in and year out. Whereas a team like Baltimore, they just get it. They're one of the few that actually know how to identify a player. And first of all, they're one of the few teams in the league that understands what their identity is. And then they go out and get players that fit their identity to a T. Not only do they do that, but they also get really talented football players in the process. And they just manipulate the draft better than most teams in the league. They're one of the best teams to manipulate the draft. DeCosta and company, Harbaugh and Bisciotti and that whole group over there, they just get it. DeCosta and Harbaugh were sharing a drink after the draft because of how well they have done. They felt like they had done in the draft, and rightfully so. When you take a look at this draft class, you stack that up on what they've done the last couple of years with DeCosta taking over a couple of years ago now. I believe it's been since Ozzie turned over the keys to him. The last 2 drafts, I believe, were headed by Eric DeCosta, and he's just done a marvelous job of putting his team in a position to win for a very long time. And even when they allow guys to leave in free agency, like they did with Zadarius Smith or they did with CJ Mosley, they just seem to just reload. They restock. They don't ever seem to have to rebuild. They just keep going. They're like the Energizer Bunny. And the reason they're able to continue to win, and they may have that, 8-8, 9-7 year that they missed the postseason, but rarely do they fall off the wagon, especially since John Harbaugh has been there. And so they're like the Energizer Bunny. They just keep going and going and going. And the reason they're able to do that is because of drafts like the one they put forth in 2020. Let's take a look at what Eric DeCosta put together, this Picasso, this masterpiece that they assembled here along with John Harbaugh, and see how this team can get back to where they were last year and potentially exceed what they did a season ago. Best team in football during the regular season, fell short in the postseason. This type of draft here are the kind of building blocks that eventually put you over the top if you're the Baltimore Ravens. And so let's take a look at what they were able to accomplish in 2020 as we take a look at their entire draft class. All 10 selections in front of you. We'll break them down one by one. I've got a write-up for each and every single one of these players in this draft taken by the Ravens. I'll be reading from them as we break them down. Let's start this draft in the first round, 28th overall selection. Linebacker out of LSU, Patrick Queen is the selection. This is stealing, folks. This is highway robbery. The fact that the Ravens can essentially finish in the divisional round of the postseason, be the back end of the first round, and still get a guy that fits their needs to a T. And all, by the way, what I perceive to be one of the better players at his particular position in this draft. Honestly, I had Patrick Queen as my number 2 rated linebacker in this draft, obviously behind Isaiah Simmons. And he went 4th off the board at the linebacker position, if you can believe that. Just to me, one of the biggest wins of the first round. And I even said as much during my draft party as the pick was made. I said it in the moment that the Ravens might have got the best fit of round 1 getting Patrick Queen, which was a glaring need for this football team. And to have this guy fall in your lap, you feel really fortunate if you're the Baltimore Ravens. And it was a sign of things to come for the Ravens in terms of getting tremendous value throughout this draft. 6 feet, 229 pounds, 4.5 flat runs, Patrick Queen. Again, 12 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, no forced fumbles, an interception, 2 pass breakups in 15 games for the national champion LSU Tigers. Career stats, 17.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, no forced fumbles, 1 interception, 2 pass breakups. Now, keep in mind, this is a guy with not a ton of experience. So you feel like, and again, you're either glass half full, glass half empty. I'm a glass half full guy. So when I see a player like Patrick Queen, who performed as well as he did on the big stage for the LSU Tigers this past year, knowing that he doesn't have a ton of experience, but seeing what he was able to accomplish with that little experience, to me, he's only going to get better. Now, you can say he doesn't have the background at the position. He doesn't have the experience, nor does he have the production of, say, Oklahoma linebacker that was taken ahead of him that the Chargers traded up to take in the first round in Murray. I understand that. I hear what you're saying, but I see the upside in Queen being greater than that of Murray. And for me, that's why he was my number 2 rated linebacker in this draft. So you can look at it glass half empty and say, not enough experience. This is a guy that is really green and wet behind the ears. His breath still smells like Similac. Or you could say, hey, this is a guy with tremendous upside and potential that's through the roof. And once we get him into our building and we put him to the test and we get the coaching staff to really put him to work, this is a guy that's going to end up being one of the better linebackers in football. And that's how I see it. Obviously, I had a first round grade on him, had him as my number 2 rated linebacker. Here's why. Speed is the first strength for Patrick Queen. That 4.5 flat is all you need to know in terms of speed. The guy can run. You see it on tape, man. He's a blur at times. Quickness. You can be fast and not quick. I know that sounds crazy, but you can run really fast in a straight line, but not be able to move laterally and have agility and be quick in your movements. Have them be twitchy. He's twitchy, From point A to point B, he can get there in a hurry, and he can start and he can stop, and it happens very rapidly. And so that's what I mean by quickness. Some guys can build up speed and they're fast, but they're not quick. He's quick. From point A to point B, he gets there in a hurry. And if that's starting and stopping again, changing directions and then reaccelerating, he can do that, which leads me to the next strength, explosiveness. I think that's the thing that stands out on tape with Patrick Queen is just his explosiveness, his ability to get from one place to the next on the field in a hurry. And it doesn't take much. You're talking 2 steps and this guy's moving at full speed. He's got that ability to shift gears and get there in a hurry. That explosiveness will serve him well at the next level. LSU pedigree. For what it's worth, the LSU Tigers have been just churning out big-time NFL backers. They all come in the league. They look a little undersized. They get here and they just do damage and wreak havoc on the league. Whether you're talking Deion Jones or last year's first-round pick in Devin White, they just keep coming. Quan Alexander pretty much started it off in terms of the latest crop of backs. It was Quan Alexander, then it was Deion Jones, and then it was Devin White. Now it's Patrick Queen, and they just keep coming. They keep churning out big-time playmakers at the next level at the linebacker position, does the LSU Tigers. And I think Patrick Queen is the next in a long line of these LSU backers to come in and really be productive at the NFL level. Comes downhill in a hurry. This is a guy that, again, once he sees it, he goes much faster than slow. And the thing I love about it is, I've said this about safeties, and I talk about this with the linebackers, and it really rings true. Some guys just see it, all right? And they see what's happening, they know what's happening, but they don't have the physical gifts to get there. And that sucks. That's got to be rough. When you see it, You know what's happening, but you physically just can't get there. It's like how a great player feels at the end of their career. They see it. They know that 5-6 years ago, they'd be able to get there, no problems. And now they just can't. They don't have that same ability. With him, he comes downhill in a hurry. He sees it. He reacts. And before you can react, he's already there making the play. Coverage ability, I think he's going to get even better. This is the one part of his game that I think he's still growing at. And he's going to get even better, and he's already good at this part of his game. But I think there are some holes there. He'll get better at this. We saw it against against Alabama right before the half. Drops underneath a Tua offering right before halftime. Puts LSU in a position to really bust the game wide open, and they score a touchdown right before halftime. Go up by 20, 33-13. His interception was key in really pushing that lead out. And so his coverage ability is good. It's not great, but it'll get there, I believe, with more time and experience. Plays with controlled aggression. You usually like guys that play with a lot of energy, that are high octane in that department, but you also want them to be able to control it. A lot of times when you hear guys being high motor, high energy guys, they're also OC, or out of control, as I like to say, OC. He's not one of those guys. He plays under control even though he's running around the field like a maniac. He plays with controlled aggression. And again, that's something that serves him well and will continue to do so at the next level. Seek and destroy mentality. This is a guy that wants to take your head off. All right. He's coming with bad intentions, downhill, physically. And, at 229 pounds, you're not expecting a guy to be coming at you as a physical enforcer and a striker, but that's exactly what Patrick Queen is coming as at the linebacker position. And I love his mentality. I love the way he plays the game. And again, it's why I'm excited about him at the next level. Sound tackler. And I talked about this guy running around the field like a blur, but still being able to get you onto the ground. And that's where that playing controlled comes into play. I know a bunch of guys that can run really fast, that have sideline to sideline speed, but when they get to the ball carrier, they're unable to break down and actually get guys on the ground. They're flying by, they're getting a piece of the ball carrier, but not actually bringing them down to the ground because they can't find a way to harness all of that energy and be able to produce a tackle once they get to the ball carrier. Not the case for Patrick Queen. Diagnosis and fires. Like I said, he's one of those guys that sees it and then he shoots his gun. He's not wasting a bunch of time. He's not sitting there waiting for that lineman to climb to the second level to get to him. He's not waiting. He sees it, he diagnoses, and then he fires his gun. And before you know it, he's in the backfield or he's meeting you in the hole, and it's a minimal gain. And again, that's what the elite linebackers do, is they don't wait for the action. They bring it to you. They don't wait for the fight. They bring the fight to the opposition. Patrick Queen is one of those linebackers. Weaknesses, limited time as a starter. Like I said, if you want to point to something that some other teams might have had an issue with, it's that he doesn't have a ton of experience. That's fine. I mean, to each its own. I look at it as a plus because I saw enough on tape. And this was a guy that really only got an opportunity to start because one of the linebackers at LSU left the program, and it gave Patrick Queen an opportunity to really show what he was capable of. And so if that doesn't happen, he may not even be here in the first round. This was a guy that wasn't even on the radar, 6 months ago. When the season started, it's similar to the meteoric rise of his teammate, Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow wasn't even on the radar when we were talking quarterbacks heading into the college football season. When you're talking preseason watch lists and first round picks and quarterbacks that could win the Heisman and things, Joe Burrow wasn't on the radar. Neither was Patrick Queen. No one was talking about this guy. He was an afterthought. He wasn't even a name you went to LSU's defense. Like, everybody was talking about Grant Delpit and all these other guys. No one was talking about Patrick Queen. But by the end of that season, he was one of the most integral pieces of that defense. And so, yeah, not a lot of experience, but tell you what, he made the most of that opportunity, and I'm excited to see what he does at the next level. Inconsistent in route concept recognition. Remember, I talked about his ability to get better as a zone defender, as a man coverage, linebacker, and just in coverage in general. He can get better. I think that's where the lack of experience shows itself. because he hasn't seen enough route combinations. He hasn't seen enough high-low combinations and looks and what teams are looking to do. He doesn't realize what these combinations of routes are. If this guy's running an out, probably an in-breaking route from the outside, or because of how their splits are and how they're set up, this is probably what they're going to do. If they're out wide, probably going to be running an in-breaking route. Like, he hasn't gotten to that point where he sees what's going on, or, okay, he's going to sit down in zone. Let me restrict this zone. Let me eat up a little bit more of this space so that the quarterback isn't comfortable trying to fit it into this tight window. This guy's running into my zone. I'm going to match him. All right. Like, I don't think he's at that level yet. He'll get there, though. And that's why you should be excited if you're a Baltimore Ravens fan. Stays glued to blocks at times. Look, he's 229 pounds. Okay. He'll get bigger. And I think he's one of those guys that can get bigger without losing his athleticism. But at 230 pounds, you're going to get glued to some blocks sometimes and find it hard to disengage. He'll get better at that. That's part of the reason why it's imperative that he shoot his gun, that he go much faster than slow and doesn't wait, because when guys are able to get to him at the second level, sometimes he's not able to get off of those blocks. But be that as it may, I absolutely love this pick. Love it. I don't think if you're the Ravens, you could have come out any better. I honestly was so surprised that he was there. As I mentioned, had him as my second-rated linebacker. For him to be the fourth backer taken in this draft, are you serious? Like, I don't know what the Seahawks saw in Jordan Brooks, and not to take anything away from Jordan Brooks, but he's not better than Patrick Queen. Now, he might have fit what they want to do in Seattle, but it's what the Seahawks do. They routinely try to prove that they're the smartest guys in the room. I think they really overthought this situation. If you wanted a backer, Patrick Queen was sitting right there for you to take. And they simply just whiffed to me if you're the Seahawks. And to me, Patrick Queen is the perfect fit in Baltimore. You needed a guy to take the place of C.J. Mosley. And then after seeing Patrick Owasso leave in free agency as well, you definitely were dying for a guy to come in and take that leadership role over and be your alpha male at the linebacker position. And I think you found that guy in the first round, 28th overall selection, linebacker out of LSU. Patrick Queen for me is absolutely a 5. That's an easy one. To me, my comp for him is Thomas Davis. I see him with those same type of attributes. Remember, Thomas Davis came in to the league as an ex-safety that turned backer late in his Georgia career. You could see that athleticism translating over to the NFL. He had a couple of injuries. People kind of doubted would he ever be the same guy. Comes back from like 3 ACL injuries to really be one of the premier linebackers in the game for the last decade, along with his running mate and Luke Kuechly. And so I see a lot of the same qualities here in Patrick Queen that I saw in Thomas Davis coming out of Georgia once upon a time. You go to the next selection in this draft for the Ravens, and the hits just keep on coming. Second round, 55th overall selection, running back out of the Ohio State University, J.K. Dobbins is the pick. Another guy that just absolutely had no business being here. Like, this was the 5th running back taken in this draft, which it behooves me to think that 4 guys were better than him in this draft. 2 were better than him in my estimation. I had him as my 3rd running back in this draft. And I know I talked to some people and they're like, well, he was my number 1 back. Nah, he wasn't the number 1 back in this draft. But again, to each its own. All right. He was 2 at best. Okay. To me, if you either liked DeAndre Swift as number 1, or you liked who I liked as number 1, Jonathan Taylor. And then I thought after one of those guys, if you wanted to slide J.K. Dobbins in there, be my guest. But to me, both of those guys were better than J.K. Dobbins. And then came Dobbins 3rd to see other guys like, and I get it. It's all about fit. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire fit in Kansas City. I get it. But, to see, and I forgot who the other running back, Cam Sims or Cam Akers went to the Rams. And I get it. He's a talented back as well. I don't think he's better personally than J.K. Dobbins, but whatever the case may be, everybody else's loss is the Ravens' gain here. They're the benefactors of this and the real beneficiaries. 5'10", 217 pounds. No 40 for J.K. Dobbins on tape, on record, really, but I think he's a 4.48 to a 4.52 guy, somewhere in that general vicinity. And you can't go wrong with J.K. Dobbins. 301 rushes for 2,003 yards and 21 scores to go along with 23 catches, 247 yards, and 2 scores in 14 games for the Big Ten champion Buckeyes. You go to his rushes for his career, 725 rushes for 4,459 yards, 38 scores to go along with 71 receptions for 645 yards and 5 scores in 42 games. This guy was a workhorse at Ohio State, especially last season. The first couple of years in Ohio State, at Ohio State, he shared the load with other guys, Weber and some of those other guys that were there. They took a little bit of the pressure off of him. But last year, he was the guy. And so a ton of carries, a lot of carries, over 300 carries. And then another 20 some odd catches. So a lot of usage for him. A little bit of wear and tear on that odometer. That number is a little higher than you would like it to be. But the good thing is in Baltimore, he's going to have other guys there to help him with that load as well. But I had a late first to early second round grade. And for him to go mid to late second round is an absolute steal in my estimation. Strengths, his size, really good size at 5'10", right around 220 pounds. He's got quickness. I think he's quicker than fast, to be honest with you. His quickness is really deceptive because you look at his body type and you see a bigger back that you think, okay, he's got like a Maurice Claret body, so he's probably not super fast. And then he gets you in the hole, gives you a little shimmy shake and breaks you off something proper. And next thing you know, you're on the ground and he's still running. And so his quickness is not to be dismissed. He's got a nasty jump cut and just some ability to make you miss. Agility, it goes along with that quickness that I just referenced. His ability to get in and out of cuts without losing speed, without breaking stride is something else that he does phenomenally well. Workhorse capabilities. I talked about the 300 carries that he had in 2019. He's a guy that if you need to, 31 touches in a game, that's right up his alley. He can handle that. And there were a couple of backs like that in this particular draft class, J.K. Dobbins being one of those guys. Yards after contact, and he's one of those guys that just steadily gets yards after being contacted. One of those guys that falls forward routinely. And so, again, if you don't come with the hard hat and the lunch pail, you're not getting J.K. Dobbins on the ground with a measly arm tackle. You're going to have to come wrap him up. Again, yards after contact is huge. Along with this next one, for me, it's one of those separators when you start talking about levels of backs in this league, the elites, the really good, the average, the below average. One of those big separators when you start talking about the elite, the best of the best in the league, is contact balance. You talk about a Christian McCaffrey, you talk about an Alvin Kamara. Those guys have elite contact balance. That means they get hit, but they don't go down. They find a way to keep their feet and get more yards after contact. There's one thing to be said about you get hit, a guy tries to take your legs out, and you stumble forward for an additional yard or a yard and a half. And it's another thing where a guy tries to take your leg out, tries to cut you, and you stumble, put your hand down, keep your balance, and run for an additional 20 yards. Or a guy tries to cut you, and you stumble a bit, but you stay upright. And I talked about this with Alvin Kamara. You see it all the time with him posting videos on his social media accounts where he's doing these balance drills on the gel ball where he's standing on one foot and he's catching footballs and he's shifting and he's doing all kinds of stuff and he's staying on that. That's where you work on your balance, your contact balance. And J.K. Dobbins has that, which is one of those elite characteristics that the big-time NFL backs have. Production, I talked about his production already through the roof. You'd love to see it. You'd like to see less wear and tear. You'd like to see that number on the odometer a lot lower, but at the end of the day, his production speaks for itself. Pass catching ability, that's something that I think with some of these backs, like Jonathan Taylor, for instance, a guy that I love, I think he got incrementally better as the years passed at Wisconsin. However, he's not at the level of a DeAndre Swift or a J.K. Dobbins or even a Cam Akers. I think that's something else that I felt like people just didn't give J.K. Dobbins enough credit at, is his ability to catch the football out of the backfield. I think that's something else that makes him a viable candidate to be on the field all three downs. Make you miss. I was surprised that he was able to make guys miss as often as he was. I didn't think that was something that was really that big a part of his game. But the more you watch, the more you see J.K. Dobbins' ability to make guys miss out in space. He's got that MYM. And finally, vision. He's got really good vision for a back. He sees it. He sets things up. He's able to find that cutback lane, backside, all of the things you want in a back. The ability to see cuts and moves one step before they actually take place. That's what J.K. Dobbins has. Weaknesses. Does he have true game-breaking speed? Some people question that. I do as well. I think he's closer to the 4.52 than he is the 4.48. Like, we could just split the difference and call it a 4.5 flat, whatever. He's still got plenty of speed to get the job done. Does he have the kind of speed that's going to run away from people at the next level? I don't believe so, but we will see. Inconsistent pass pro. I don't worry about him catching the football. I don't worry about him running it out of any kind of gun formation or any kind of obvious passing formation. I worry about him on third downs, protecting the quarterback. I've got a love-hate relationship with J.K. Dobbins and his pass pro. 1 minute, it's great, and you're like, this is what I'm talking about, J.K., and then the next minute, it's awful. It's flaccid. You're like, J.K., I can't have that, bro. If you can't give me something better than that, I can't have you on the field on third down. So he's inconsistent at best with his pass pro. Going to have to get better if he wants to be on the field on third downs. Is he dynamic enough? I mean, these are all questions that, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. When I watch him, the reason why I had other guys over him was because it's not as dynamic. He looks like a guy that can do everything at a high level, but not at an elite level. Like, in the case of Jonathan Taylor, he's got elite game-changing speed. All right. In the case of DeAndre Swift, he's got elite pass-catching ability and elite make-you-miss out in space. His ability to stick his foot in the ground and make you miss is top-notch. J.K. Dobbins is just really good at everything. He's not necessarily great at one thing. And so you ask yourself, is he really dynamic? You know what? Doesn't have to be in this Ravens offense. Just be J.K. Dobbins, and that will be plenty. Fumbles. That's an issue. Look, he's not as bad as Jonathan Taylor. And if people ding Jonathan Taylor for his lack of ball security, go right ahead. I can't defend him. He had 18 career fumbles at Wisconsin in a 3-year span. I can't defend that. All right, lost 15 of them. That's blasphemy is what it is. JK has 5 fumbles and 4 of them lost in 3 years. Still too many for my liking. But it's not 18, okay? All right, but he can protect the football a little bit more. That being said, 3 fumbles last season, 2 of them lost, and 1 in each of the seasons preceding 2019. He had his worst season from a carry standpoint. That's because he had more carries and more touches in 2019 than he did in the previous 2 seasons. He had more fumbles in 2019. That's a concern for me. Had that number been trending downward, had he had 3 in his freshman year and then 2 and then 1, then I'm thinking, okay, he's getting better. But to have 3 this past year because the workload saw an uptick, that's a little alarming. I'd like to see him nip that in the bud before it becomes a real problem. Just some other side notes. Played in all 42 games in his career. And 8 of 14 games in 2019, he rushed for either 150 yards or more. So he put up some big-time numbers at the Ohio State University. This is another no-brainer. The Ravens had no business getting their hands on this caliber player here in the second round, 55th overall, running back out of the Ohio State University. J.K. Dobbins for me is a 5. That's a big-time get for them. And really at a position that I didn't necessarily declare as a need heading into the draft. I thought they got enough production out of the running back position last year. Remember, they just took Justice Hill in the draft a year or 2 ago. So I felt like between Gus Edwards and Ingram and Justice Hill, there was enough stuff in that backfield. They said, can't pass on this type of productivity and this type of talent at this point of the draft. Got to take the best player available. I don't blame them. My comp for him is Ezekiel Elliott, another former Buckeye. They look very similar in their stature and the way that they play. The only difference to me is Elliott had true game-breaking speed. He could run away from people. I don't know if J.K. Dobbins has the same thing or not. As we move on to the next selection in this draft for the Baltimore Ravens, and this is the thing I love about the Ravens, As we get to the third round, 71st pick overall, defensive tackle out of Texas A&M, Justin Madubuike is the selection. This is the thing I love about the Ravens, and the thing that they do better than most teams is that, yeah, they're going to end up with 9 or 10 picks at the end of the day when the draft is all said and done, because that's what they do. They build through the draft. But here's the thing. They're not stockpiling 6 7th-round picks. They don't have 4 7th-round picks. They'll trade that 6th-round pick away to the Jacksonville Jaguars in exchange for a defensive tackle, or a defensive end in Calais Campbell. They'll do that. All right, they'll trade away a player in exchange for your 3rd or 4th-round pick, like they did with the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, trading away an interior lineman in Chris Wormley for like a 3rd or 4th-round pick. That's how you win in this league. That's how you win the draft. Is that I don't want 4 7th-round picks. Those guys, more likely than not making my football team. I want to maximize the draft. So if I want a bunch of picks, I want them to be in the mid rounds. I want 3 third rounders. I want 3 4th rounders. That's where you make your hay in the draft. All right. So I'll package up 2 or 3 7s. Give you those. Let me get your 5th. I don't need 3 7s. Let me get your 5th. And all the other teams that want to throw 80 darts in the final 2 rounds, let them. The Ravens are like, I'm good. Let me do all my damage in the mid rounds, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And they're about to do some serious damage in the 3rd round. Justin Madubuike, to me, was one of the better interior pass rushing defensive tackles in this draft. That's why I get excited about him. 6'3", 293 pounds, 33.5-inch arms, 11.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks to go along with a forced fumble, 2 pass breakups, 1 block kick, and an interception in 2019 for his career. 24.5 tackles for loss, 11 of which were sacks, 5 forced fumbles. That's a huge number, guys. 4 pass breakups, 2 blocked kicks, and an interception. So this is a guy that impacts the game in a multitude of ways. And you see the dynamic ability, you see the explosion, you see the ability for him to impact the game from the interior defensive line. That should get you excited. I had him as my 7th rated defensive lineman. That's because I added a couple of guys into the mix that you may assign them the edge rusher tag. Like, for instance, AJ Epineza. I assigned him a defensive line tag where he's probably more of an edge rusher, but I saw him as a guy that was more of a defensive lineman. So, you take him out of the mix, and he's probably my 6th defensive lineman. He was the 5th defensive lineman taken in this draft, so right around where I thought he should be taken. And to go a step further, I had a late round 2 to a 3rd round grade, and I put in my notes more of a 3rd round pick, and he got taken in the 3rd round. So I think it's tremendous value by the Baltimore Ravens. Yet again, you'll hear that phrase many more times before this breakdown is done. Strengths. Good pad level, which leads to outstanding, consistent leverage. We all know, we've heard this adage a million times. Low man wins in the trenches. That's never more true than inside at the interior positions. You may be able to get away with a lack of leverage on the edges. And usually you still will find some issues with that if a guy's able to get up under your pads and bull rush you and you're looking for speed. But on the interior, it's really imperative that you keep a low pad level and that you win the leverage battle when guys are really strong and looking to bull rush you. And Justin Madubuike is one of those guys that has a low center of gravity to begin with and then gets low and wins that pad leverage battle and is able to do some good work in there with his leverage. Unexpected short area quickness. I went into this, and as I always do with a lot of these prospects, with no expectations, not expecting much, unless someone tells me, hey, go watch this guy. He's got this, he's got that. But more times than not, I'm going in no expectations. And when I looked at his body type, I said, okay, he looks like a bowling ball in a china shop. I don't expect a bunch of explosion here, but his short area quickness, it's the reason why this guy has a chance to be a difference maker from a pass rusher standpoint at the next level. Plays with an infectious relentlessness. Again, I love the big guys that play with energy. My thing is, as a defensive lineman, don't save it. Don't save anything in the tank. When you're done and you don't have anything more to give, tap out. We can get somebody else in there, but while you're in there, give me everything you got. He's one of those guys that's giving me every single thing he's got on every single snap, and I love that. Can knife into gaps And not just as a pass rusher, but as a guy that can stop the run. Those 11 and a half tackles for loss, 6 of them were tackles in the backfield on running backs. So this is a guy that can knife into gaps, get skinny, and find ways to make plays on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Filled up the stat sheet in back-to-back seasons. He put up some big-time numbers. I gave you his 2019 numbers. 2018 looked just as robust. So this is a guy that didn't just do it for 1 year. You see a lot of that. When you look at guys' stats and you kind of break it down, that last year they were in school, they had a monster year. Or for a lot of guys, and this is really shocking, a lot of guys, they'll have a monster 2018 and follow that up with a lackluster 2019. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell happened? And, to take it a step further, if you were a junior after that 2018 campaign, why didn't you come out? But that's nor here nor there. He backed up a dominant 2018 with an even better 2019. Love seeing that. He's trending in the right direction. Stack and shed capabilities. He's one of these guys that, and again, this is where that leverage comes in. Wins the leverage battle, able to stack and then shed the offensive lineman, get to the ball carrier. Added special teams benefit. This guy blocked 2 kicks while at Texas A&M. So you go ahead and add that to the list of things that this guy can do to impact the game. Not only can he rush the quarterback, not only can he be a disruptive force in the run game, but he also is batting down passes, had 4 pass breakups. He's forcing fumbles, 5 of those in his career, and now add to the list 2 block kicks. So he's impacting the game on special teams as well. Weaknesses. He looks small and stubby. When I looked at him on tape, the first thing I looked at him was, wow, he's small. And then I looked back and referred to my notes to see how big he actually was. And I'm like, man, he doesn't look 6'3". He doesn't look 293 pounds. He looked small on tape. My goodness. Extremely late off the snap, way too often. That's something he's got to clean up. There were times where the ball's been snapped for a full second and this guy's still kind of standing there with his hand in the dirt and everybody else has already gotten off the ball. And I'm like, yo, Justin, the ball was snapped, right? He's like, oh, no, I didn't know. Go, he's got to be better at getting off the football, which is disappointing because of the short area quickness. You kind of negate the ability to win with a quick swim move, right off the snap because you're not getting off the ball in enough time to really impact the play in that regard. So I'd like to see him start timing up the snap a lot better. Can be uprooted from his gap too easily. Again, he's an undersized interior defensive lineman. He's not a 2-gapper. He's a 1-gapper. He's a 1-gap penetrator. If you try to force him to be anything else other than what he is, you're going to be very disappointed and you're sadly mistaken if you're trying to make Justin Madubuike anything other than what he truly is. Not scheme diverse. To me, he's an even front defensive tackle. You may be able to play him as an odd front defensive end. I think that's intriguing. But if you're looking to move him inside in an odd front, you're sadly mistaken. That's not what he is. He's not a nose. He is an even front defensive tackle, to me. And the Ravens, although they play a 3-4 a lot of times, they're in nickel and they're in their sub packages a ton, just like the rest of the league is. So you're going to be in even fronts a lot of times. And a guy like Justin Madubuike, that's where he feasts. That's where he does his best work. So I love this selection for the Ravens here in the 3rd round. I think it's tremendous value and it's a position of need. They got gutted last year in the playoffs by the Tennessee Titans, and they could use more guys that can get after the quarterback along the defensive line. That's why they went out and got a Calais Campbell to be stout in the middle, but also to present a pass rushing presence along that defensive line. You add Justin Madubuike to the mix, he's going to give you some juice off the line as well from a pass rushing standpoint. So my comp for him is Timmy Jernigan's, a guy that's kind of short, built low to the ground, but has the ability to affect the game getting after the quarterback. And I see a lot of the same things here in Justin Madubuike in the 3rd round, 71st pick overall. Defensive lineman out of Texas A&M, Justin Madubuike, for me is a 4, man. Love this selection by the Ravens. As the hits just keep coming. As we remain in the 3rd round, I told you the Ravens do Ullman-like work in the mid-rounds. This is where they build their dynasty. 92nd pick overall, and this is how you build a dynasty, I should say. Wide receiver out of Texas, Devin Duvernay is the selection. this is a guy that I'm not going to lie to you. I slept on Devin Duvernay throughout this entire process. And it wasn't until late, I mean, very, very late, when I kept having people send me messages because I had talked so much about receivers and never brought this guy's name up. It was only until late in the process that I said, let me go check out Devin Duvernay some more. And it's when I did that second deep dive is when I really said, man, I was asleep behind the wheel. I was asleep. My third eye was not open. I was not woke. And this is a really good receiver. I had to go back and reconfigure my receiver ranking and slide him in because he was that good. 5'10", 200 pounds, ran a 4.39. He's a track guy, so he can absolutely fly. 106 receptions for 1,386 yards and 9 scores to go along with 10 kick returns for 205 yards and no touchdowns in 13 games. I mean, that 106 reception season in 2019 kind of blew the doors off of his career and kind of put him center stage. Before then, he was all right, but last year really put him over the top. 176 career grabs for 2,468 yards and 16 scores, and 26 kick returns for 550 yards and no scores in 52 games. So, I mean, think about that. Before last year, he only had 70 grabs, only 70 grabs for right over 1,100 yards or so and 7 scores. Well, he doubled everything, in one season. He topped his career stats in 1 year. So big year for him, and it got him drafted in the 3rd round. I had a 3rd round grade on him after going back and assessing, and I made him my 14th wide receiver in this draft. This was a ridiculous draft class for receivers. So 14th is nothing to scoff at. You could have went 20 deep and gotten you a quality receiver this year in the draft. And when I say quality, a guy that's good enough to be one of your top 3 options on your football team and a key contributor moving forward. It was that deep at the receiver position in this draft. Strengths: compact, sturdy frame. At 5'10" and 200 pounds, he looks like a big, blown up, souped up running back at the receiver position. And that's the way he plays. Blazing speed. All right. This guy can absolutely fly. I talked about the 4.39 40. What more can I say? What more do I need to say? Tough yak getter. All right. Yards after contact, yards after catch. You call it what you want, but he gets it. Okay. Turns into a 230-pound running back with the ball in his hands. I mean, he just turns into a physical bruiser. It's like Marshawn Lynch with the ball in his hands once he gets it. It's just insane how he's running guys over and running through arm tackles, and three defenders has to bring down this 5'10" dynamo all of a sudden with the football in his hands. It's crazy. Big play threat. You saw it in numerous games, whether it was against TCU, whether it was against LSU. This guy's explosive, and he's always one touch away from making a house call. And so the big play ability definitely there with Devin Duvernay. Able to settle into soft parts of the zone. And that's a part of his game that I saw blossom in 2019, that he got more efficient at and much better at, is being able to find the soft spots in the zone, sit down, make himself available for the quarterback. Reliable pass catcher. I slept on his hands. The first time I watched him, I slept on a lot of his key attributes, and this is one of them. The fact that usually when a ball touches his hands, he doesn't drop the football. He can make the quarterback right. He can go down and dig it out of the turf. He can go up and get it. He can catch it with his body, catch it away from his frame. He's a really reliable pass catcher, man. You can throw it to him into a tight window, in tight coverage, feel comfortable. He's going to come away with it. Really reliable pass catcher. Big time 2019, as I mentioned already, that put him on the map. Honestly, without 2019, the speed is still very present and probably something that gets him noticed, but you're not spending a 3rd round pick on Devin Duvernay without the 2019 production. So 2019 was huge for him. And I think if that's just the tip of the iceberg, you're really excited about what he could be at the next level in this ridiculous offense with all the speed that's going to be around him. Hollywood Brown, and you got Lamar Jackson now, J.K. Dobbins at quarterback. With all of these guys, the Notre Dame receiver you took last year, that's a 4.4 guy there. There's just so much speed on the Ravens offense. Your tight ends can run as well. You add this guy to the mix, it's just ridiculous. And then special teams value, I don't think he's as much of a threat as a return man, hence no touchdowns in his career. He's too tight-hipped to be a dynamic return man from the sense of making guys miss. But hell, you give him a crease, he can go much faster than slow. And so if you want to throw him back on special teams, he can give you that as well. Weaknesses, tight hips, which restrict suddenness. So one of the knocks on him is that he didn't have necessarily the shiftiness or the quickness you want to get in and out of breaks and break dudes off in the slot. You know, you want the guys that have the shiftiness like a Cole Beasley, you know, or the guys that were OGs like Wes Welker and Danny Amendola, guys that get in that slot, break you off something proper, leave you at the bus stop and go get a big time grab on 3rd and 7. That's not necessarily what Devin Duvernay is doing. You know what I mean? Because he's tight in the hips. But look, if he runs a slant, he's going to beat you on that slant if you're not prepared to defend slant because he's too fast, you know. Can improve as a route runner. He does drift on some of his routes, you know, where, you know, instead of him coming down flat, he's kind of drifting up the field. That allows guys to undercut and come under and maybe make a play on the football. Questionable body language is, to me, the biggest thing that I see with him as a route runner right now. Not necessarily the drifting. I think you can clean that up, and he can clean up his body language as well. But that's, to me, the biggest thing right now. There are a couple of instances you watch on tape, and he's just, him and his quarterback on the same page. Why? Because he's selling one thing to his quarterback, and then he's doing another. And you have to be in sync with your quarterback. You can't fake out your quarterback. You got to fake out the defender. But if you look like you're going to the corner, you know, if you look like you're going to run a fade, I need you to give me the body language that says, hey, I'm just faking this slant or this post. I'm going to the fade. You know, don't give me the fade and then decide you want to run a post and now I throw the fade and nobody's home, you know. And you saw that a couple times on tape where his body language said one thing to the quarterback. He does another thing, and that's confusing. He's got to clean that up. And in his tempo, he's a monotone route runner. You know, everything is at one speed. He's got to learn how to downshift, then shift back into high gear and kind of lull a guy to sleep. His tempo right now as a route runner, not what you would like it to be. He's got a small catch radius. You know, he's a 5'10" guy with shorter arms, not a lot of, you know, catches away from the frame, climbing the ladder per se, but he can go down and get it for sure. But not a huge catch radius. And then he's not much of a MYM guy. He's not much of a make you miss guy because I told you he's got tight hips, so not a lot of agility. But he'll run your ass over, though. That's his make you miss. He'll run you over. So in the 3rd round, and this is also on the Carfax, his cousin is Kyler Murray, for whatever that's worth. So, you know, the speed and the dynamic ability runs in the family, I guess. But in the 3rd round, 92nd pick overall, wide receiver out of Texas, Devin Duvernay for me is a 4. Another burst of speed added to this ridiculously fast, already track team offense that the Ravens put on the field. Add another guy that can absolutely fly to the mix in Devin Duvernay. As we move on to the next selection, 3rd round, 98th overall selection, linebacker out of the Ohio State University, Malik Harrison is the pick. 6'3", 247 pounds, ran a 4.66 at his size. That's a hell of a time. 16 and a half tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, no forced fumbles, but 4 pass breakups, no interceptions in his 2019 campaign in 14 games. For his career, 29 tackles for loss, 10 sacks, no forced fumbles, 9 pass breakups, 1 interception in his career. So Malik Harrison is one of those guys that the Ohio State Buckeyes have done a good job of producing linebackers over the years. You know, you look at the guys in Miami and Raekwon McMillan and Jerome Baker. Now you add Malik Harrison to the mix. We all know, and the guy that to me set the trend and was the mold for Ohio State backs in the league was, of course, Ryan Shazier before his tragic injury on the field. But They've done a really good job of churning out these linebackers at the next level, similar to LSU. And I think Malik Harrison is the next in that nice little lineage that they seem to be building at Ohio State at the linebacker position. I had a 4th-round grade on him, so this was a little early for me, but I still like the pick. And I'll tell you why I like this pick a little bit later on as we get to the end of this breakdown of Malik Harrison, why I like it even more. But he was my 6th-rated linebacker, and he was the 9th linebacker taken in this draft, 10th if you count Josh Uche as a linebacker. I count him as an edge rusher, but that's nor here nor there. Bottom line is, from that standpoint, I think you got tremendous value here getting him when you did. Strengths, big, physically imposing frame. Man, he looks like a monster out on the football field. You know, man amongst boys at 6'3", damn near 250. He's huge. Physical at the point of attack, especially when coming downhill. Like I said, he's an animal, especially when he's coming downhill. You know, you want no smoke with Malik Harrison coming at you full speed, unabated. This guy is a freak. And again, you know, at 250 pounds, running a 4.66, that's pretty damn fast for a guy carrying that kind of weight around, you know. So he's really physical coming downhill. Aggressive taking on blockers. And when I talk about that being physical and that physicality coming downhill, this is a great example of it. Taking on blockers. I watched him. I want to say it was against Clemson in the playoff game. It might have been against Michigan. It was one of these games. I think it was Clemson. But a fullback comes up the, I want to say it was up the B gap to take on Malik Harrison. And he just obliterates him. Just puts him on his ass. Plants him on the ground, and I'm like, whoa. Very unnecessary, but I like it. He's got that kind of physicality. He takes on guys, and really, it doesn't matter if you're a tight end, you're a fullback, or you're a tackle, or you're a pulling guard. This guy will take on you and dispose of you and get to the ball carrier. Outstanding change of direction for a backer his size. Generally, you see a guy that big, 6'3", 250, you're thinking, okay, he's going to be a little sluggish. Going to be hard for him to flip his hips, change directions. Actually, Malik Harrison flips his hips, and that's why he's actually not as big a liability in the pass game as I thought he was going to be. Now, he's still got his issues in the pass game. Don't get me wrong. But I thought he was going to be absolutely 100% unequivocally unable to be on the field on third downs. Like, you can't have him on the field. He's a 2-down linebacker. No, he's actually a guy that can do a little something in the passing game, and the reason why is because his change of direction, not half bad for a guy his size. Uses his hands well to disrupt blockers and pass catchers underneath. Does a really good job of just laying hands. There's a lost art with these linebackers and laying hands on guys. There's something to be said about not grabbing. A lot of these guys, safeties and backers and these underneath defenders, love to grab. Don't grab, impede. All right, hit them, punch them, push them. Don't grab. All right, don't grab. You know, there are other ways to stop a guy's momentum than just grabbing him. He's really good at just giving guys a hard, stiff shoulder or chucking them and just really disrupting the timing of their route. And that's what you want to do. Like, that's what you should be doing. High success rate as a tackler. He didn't miss very often, you know. And again, these are the kind of guys you love, guys that are reliable tacklers, guys that come downhill, physical, bad intentions, but also get guys on the ground. Can hold his own as a zone dropping defender. And the thing I love, and this is something that a lot of people don't really talk about, is just how tough it is to throw the football up the seams with touch. When it's a 6'3" linebacker jumping and putting his hands in the air, it makes it that much tougher. It's a lot easier, trust me, to throw the football to a tight end running up the seam or a wide receiver running a 12 or 15-yard dig route over the middle of the football field. It's a lot easier to get him the football when it's a 6-foot backer jumping in the air versus a 6'3" backer with 33-inch arms leaping in the air. You know, makes it so much tougher to get the football over a guy that size. And so he holds his own in the zone game in terms of his drops. Again, I told you already, I was impressed. Weaknesses, kind of a clunky mover, sort of mechanical in nature. He's a big guy. I thought I would see more of this, which is why the change of direction was such a shock to me, because When you see a guy kind of mechanical in his movements, you expect his change of direction to be really funky, and it wasn't. But he is a little bit clunky of a mover. It's somewhat mechanical in his movements, but it's still fluid enough for him to be effective at the next level. This is the biggest knock I have on him right here. Poor pursuit angles can be detrimental. See the Travis Etienne screen for a touchdown, the game winner in the playoff game versus Clemson. He takes a horrible angle, and he's the guy responsible for Travis Etienne on that catch. Well, that wasn't the game winner. That was the touchdown to give Clemson their first lead of the game, and then they ended up scoring on another Travis Etienne catch and run later in the game. But the screen was the play that gave them the lead that they would hold for much of the second half, and he was supposed to be responsible for Travis Etienne on that play, and he just took a poor angle. And it was that poor angle that gave Travis Etienne all the space he needed to rev up the engine and end up taking off for a touchdown. He's got to take better pursuit angles. Bites down on play action fake way too hard. Can't bite the eye candy. They want to sell you the candy. They want to throw out Kit Kats and Snickers and Almond Joys. Don't bite it. All right? Do not bite down on the eye candy. Sometimes he does. He's a liability in man-to-man. For as good as he can be in zone-dropping situations, in man-to-man, he just doesn't have the fluidity to run with guys. And so that's something you want to rethink when you're talking Malik Harrison. But the reason why I love this pick so much, and in the third round, 98th overall selection, linebacker out of the Ohio State University, Raekwon McMillan for me is a 4. The reason why I love this pick so much, Malik Harrison is a 4, and my comp for him is Raekwon McMillan, the ex-Ohio State product. Similar size, similar skill set, a lot of the same question marks coming out of Ohio State. I think Raekwon McMillan has handled some of those really well, and I expect Malik Harrison to do much of the same. But the reason I love this pick so much is because you didn't draft him to be the all-world 3-down linebacker. That's what you got Patrick Queen for. You drafted this guy to be the hammer, the enforcer on this defense at the linebacker position. Your linebacker position just got exponentially better. You went from linebacker being somewhat of a liability to now a strength for this Ravens team, essentially overnight. You know, with bringing back the Grand Valley State product, Matt Judon, and adding these guys to the mix at the linebacker position, all of a sudden now, this group is as strong as it's ever been, to be honest with you. And you look at Malik Harrison, you're not asking him to drop into coverage as often with a guy like Patrick Queen now on the roster. You're going to let him do what he does best, go downhill and be a thumper, and then in certain situations, drop into zone coverage and be able to help you. So the fact that you're not going to ask him to be that third down, do everything, all-world linebacker because you drafted Patrick Queen to do that, I think it's going to allow him to fit in better and assimilate to the NFL game that much better as we move on to the next selection in this draft for the Baltimore Ravens. The third round, I talked about the damage they were doing in the third round for the Ravens. Here's a great example of that. We're still in the third round, their third round selection. Third round, 106th overall selection, offensive lineman out of Mississippi State, Tyre Phillips is the selection, 6'5", 331 pounds, 35-inch arms, 13 games, 13 starts at left tackle in 2019. For his career, 26 games, 13 starts at left tackle. So what I just essentially told you is that this guy's a one-year starter at Mississippi State. So we'll come back to that. I had a 4th round grade on Tyre Phillips. You took him in the 3rd round. A little early for me on Tyre Phillips. I thought that the sweet spot in this draft for interior offensive linemen was going to be the 3rd into the 4th round and bleed into the 5th. And that is exactly what happened. Most of the offensive linemen on the interior were taken starting in the 3rd round and really going into the 5th round. Big man. And, you know, the first thing that I thought about when I saw these numbers was this has got to be a left tackle. He's got left tackle measurements. And then I saw that he was playing left tackle. And I'm like, well, why is everybody projecting him to be a guard? And then I found out very quickly why everyone was projecting him to be a guard. But he's a big man. These are left tackle numbers at 6'5", 331 with 35-inch arms. That's left tackle stats, folks. But He generates movement in the run game. His base, combo blocks, and down blocks all uproot guys. They just simply do. When he latches on and he gets in a groove and he gets up under your pads, good night. Good luck, God bless, and good night. Anchors well. At 331 pounds, good luck trying to move this guy. When he gets his base set right and he sits down, good luck, man. You're going to need it. Recovers well for his limitations, because he's got some limitations in terms of his movement skills. But he recovers really well, and that's where those 35-inch arms come into play. He finds a way to just do enough to push you around the pocket and allow the quarterback to step up and deliver the football. Quality length, I just kind of spoke to that and how that really benefits him and how that will really aid him as he moves inside to guard. Has the ability to sustain blocks. He doesn't do it enough for my liking, but he does have the ability to do it. I saw it enough where I said, dude, why can't you do that more often? And when he does sustain, it's dominant. So I'd like to see him sustain a little bit more, but he has the ability to do that. So as long as I know it's there and I've seen it enough to know that this isn't a one-off thing, you do this enough, I just want to see you do it more. Anyway, weaknesses. Heavy feet. And lateral agility is an issue. He can't mirror. He cannot keep guys in front of him to save his life. Guys are running circles around him like they're playing duck, duck, goose. And so in terms of him being out on an island and being a left tackle, nah, bruh, that's not in the cards. He's got to kick inside the guard where he's protecting less real estate. And speed is problematic for him. Like I said, guys were running circles around him, and at times he was hanging on for dear life, but most times he was doing just enough for the city, just enough pushing guys around and allowing the quarterback to step up. But at the next level, guys are really adept. If they get around you, this isn't college football. You're not playing against Texas A&M or Arkansas. These guys are going to finish you. It's like Mortal Kombat. Finish him, dun-dun-dun. They get around you, they're going to slap your damn hands down and they're going to flatten that edge and get to the quarterback. Guys at the collegiate game aren't adept at finishing what they start. They get around the edge initially and they win the rep early, but they don't know how to finish. They don't know how to close the show by slapping down those hands and allowing you to get up the field and get to the quarterback. The guys at the NFL level, they know how to finish the deal. Only 1 year of starting experience in college ball. This is a guy that transferred over from East Mississippi Community College, spent a couple years there, got to Mississippi State, redshirted his first year there to kind of acclimate himself to the big time rigors of the SEC, and then he came in his redshirt junior year, and he just helped. He didn't start though. He was 13 games he played in, but he didn't start any of them. And then they finally said, you're ready. In his senior season, started all 13 games, but not a lot of experience under his belt. So again, glass half full versus glass half empty. Which one are you? I tend to be glass half full, but in this particular case, because of all the deficiencies that I saw, I'm thinking to myself, he could use some more seasoning, man. He could take a little bit more of that seasoning, pour it in there a little bit, but when he gets it, when he puts it all together, and he's never played guard, when he puts this all together, man, look out. Has all the requisite measurables to play tackle, but lacks the athleticism to do so. Has to move to guard, and I've pretty much outlined that for you already. So in the third round, 106th overall selection, offensive lineman out of Mississippi State, Tyre Phillips for me is a 3 for the Baltimore Ravens as we move on to the next selection. Finally leaving the third round and into the fourth round we go. Fourth round, 143rd pick overall, offensive lineman out of Michigan. Ben Bredeson is the pick. 6'5", 315 pounds, 31-inch arms. Ouch. 13 games, 13 starts at left guard, 51 games, 46 starts at left guard. So he's the anti-Tyre Phillips in that regard. This is a guy that has ample experience taking on foes in the Big Ten. I had a fourth round grade on Ben Bredeson, and you got him in the fourth round, and I really like Ben, just to give you a heads up. Well-built body equipped to bang in the trenches. My favorite thing about him is he's a nasty boy. Nasty boy. He's a nasty boy. boy. I'm talking about nasty, like the nasty boys used to put their armpits in your face, all musty. He's a nasty boy, man. Playing until the whistle and then a little bit after. He's the guy that wants to get the last lick in. You ever played that game with somebody where they hit you and you got to be the last one to get the last hit in, and then, so you hit them back and then they hit you again and you try to sneak and hit them real soft, but you want to get that last hit in? That's Ben Bredeson. Like, after the whistle is going, that guy's pushing him and he's pushing them and they push him again and he's like, "What the hell, you don't push me?" You know, and he's got his hand up around their neck and he's got it's borderline dirty, but he straddles that line and he makes sure he never crosses it. I love it, man. Want more of it. Good punch. All right. Especially with the outside arm. I was watching, I'm like, look at this dude giving dudes with his 31-inch arms. Go with your bad self with your 31-inch arms over there, giving guys the long arm, or in this case, the short arm of the law. Letting these guys know, man, stay back. Stay back. I got a quarterback to protect. Stay back. I was loving it, man. And again, when I found out he had 31 inches, I was like, whoa, this could be a real problem. Like, generally, I'm not the guy that harps on, measurables like arm length at, especially when you get to the interior. I really don't give a shit. You talk about tackles on the outside, maybe, but generally, unless you give me a reason to feel like I have a reason to be worried, I don't, generally. He gave me some reason to worry, but I saw that long arm of the law. It made me smile, man. Plays with sound base, knee bend, and leverage, man. Like, a 6'5" guy, sometimes they got issues bending the knees, man. You've heard the term heavy-legged waist bender. It's usually for those guys 6'5" or bigger. They have an issue with bending their knees. They want to bend at the hips and at their waist. And Ben Bredeson is actually one of these guys, bends at the knees, got really good flexion there, and, is able to get a nice sturdy base. And it allows him to have really good leverage, man. I mean, really impressed. Looks for work when it is scarce. This is a guy, nobody over him to block. No problem. No defender to block. No problem. I'll find work. All right. He's not one of these guys at home collecting unemployment. He's like, don't worry, I'll find some work. I'll find some jobs to do around the neighborhood. I'll find some work to do at the crib. I'll find work, all right? You need help with this interior defensive lineman? You need help with this edge rusher? Oh, it's a blitzer coming up? Don't worry, I got it. I'm going to help you. So when work is scarce, he finds some anyway. Love it. Two-time captain that commanded the respect of his teammates. Don't discount when guys are captains for multiple years. Don't discount that, all right? And finally, TE games and blitzes simply don't work against him, all right? Just don't try them. Don't waste your time, all right? Simply not going to work. Like, he was shutting down blitzes in TE games left and right. It's almost like he had psychic ability or something. He saw it coming, was like, nah, man, don't do it, all right? And these twists and these stunts, shutting them down. You want to come on a green dog? Stop it, all right? Shutting them down left and right. Love it. Weaknesses. Very, very short arms. It hurts him in the bull rush department. And so the first time I realized he had really short arms, because I didn't necessarily pay attention to it when I got into his tape. It's when I saw him against Penn State and he got dump trucked. And then it happened again later in the game. I was like, what the hell is going on? And so I went back and I checked out his base. And his base wasn't too bad on the first one. It was a little sloppy on the second one. But I said, what's the deal here? And then I saw it. I saw the guy get up under him. Ben's reaching, He's got the old mummy arms going. And the defensive lineman had already got up in his chest. And he couldn't stop him. And I said, oh, there it is. There it is. The old 31-inch armors. All right, the old 31-inchers coming into play. He has to strike first. He can't wait. If the other guy gets off first and he's got 33-inch arms, it's usually going to end bad for Ben Bredeson. Average to below average athletic movements. His climbs to the second level, his reaches, his pulls, they're all lethargic. It's like they're happening in slow motion. It's like, God, it was painful to watch his backs running behind him, and then they just would say, to hell with it. Hey, Ben, don't worry about it. I catch you on the next one, bro. They just run right past him. He just is really limited athletically. And so this leads me to my last weakness. The further away he gets from his left guard position, the further away he gets from his left guard post, the less effective he becomes. Like, he's the true definition of a phone booth brawler. Like the guys you want in that little box that is able to do human-like work. You take them out of their element and you ask them to go be athletic away from their post, you got problems. Ben is one of those guys, not as gifted the further he moves away from his position. But I like Ben a lot, man. In the 4th round, 143rd pick overall. Offensive lineman out of Michigan, Ben Bredeson, for me, is a 3. I tell you what, if he had longer arms, I'd be a lot more comfortable with making this a 4. But I got a really sneaky suspicion that those 31 inchers are really going to hurt him at the next level. But I still think he's a guy that could plug and play right away, despite the short arms. He's played with those arms his entire career, and it hasn't hurt him that much yet. So we'll see what happens at the next level. As we move on to the 5th round with this Ravens draft now, 170th pick overall, defensive lineman out of Texas Tech, Broderick Washington Jr. is the selection. 6'2", 305, 32.5-inch arms, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, no forced fumbles, 2 pass breakups in 12 games in 2019. For his career, 15.5 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 pass breakups in 49 games. I had a 6th-round grade on Broderick Washington Jr., so this was a little early for him in my estimation. But anyway, low center of gravity defender that doesn't allow himself to stay blocked. He's so aggressive. Speaking of which, plays with tremendous leverage, which helps him control the rep. His bull rush and sheer violence are really exciting to watch. He's one of those guys that just plays extremely hard, and he's so physical. He's so violent. Every rep, he's trying to chop your hands off. Every rep, he's trying to take your shoulders and ram them into the turf and snatch them off of your frame. Like, everything he does is with aggressive and violent intent. Love it. Especially in the trenches. Got to be nasty. You want to be nasty. You don't have to be. I'd like guys that want to be physical. Quick and violent swim move for instant penetration. He's got a really quick swim move. It's violent, too. Like, it's not the kind that's finesse, like, swim move, gotcha. It's like, swim move, gotcha, bitch. And and I'm just like, dude, why you gotta slap me so hard, man? You beat me with a swim. You didn't have to slap me that hard to do it. Everything he does is violent, period. It's probably what got him drafted here in the 5th round by the Ravens. Nice latch and snatch technique to separate from offensive linemen. I don't know why more guys don't do this. It's, to me, one of the most criminally underrated moves a guy can have in his arsenal is to grab an offensive lineman, shake him a little bit, and then snatch him. All right, latch, grab on, and snatch, which propels you forward, gives you momentum heading to your target, whether that's the running back or the quarterback. I don't know why more guys don't do it. He's got a lethal latch and snatch where he's throwing guys all over the place. Stout at the point of attack. I saw instances where double teams didn't even move Broderick Washington. So this is a guy really physical, really stout at the point of attack. That low center of gravity, that leverage battle that I talk about winning in the trenches, he routinely does that. A lot of times you see him pop up from his stance and come up with that drive, and you see a guy's shoulders just pop up backwards. It's because Broderick Washington has got up under his pads with that leverage battle. Plays the game relentlessly with intensity. I think that's the thing you're going to notice from him right away. Above all else, he just plays the game a different way. Weaknesses, not twitchy and lacks the quickness and juice to be a consistent pass rusher. I think that's why you knock a guy like Broderick Washington for all of the good things that he does, for all of the stoutness and the physicality and the violence that he plays with. The lack of twitchiness and the juice that he doesn't possess, I think is what's ultimately going to limit him to a first and second down guy, and a guy that on third downs you want to get off the field and get somebody else in there like a Justin Madubuike with a little bit more juice that can get to the quarterback. Despite his ability to disrupt the pocket at Texas Tech, not sure he'll be able to duplicate it versus bigger, stronger offensive linemen in the NFL. You know, he was able to feast off of guys in the Big 12. I'm not sure, because even when he saw bigger offensive linemen, he wasn't as successful. It was the guys that were nimble, that were a little bit smaller, that he could handle well. Those bigger guys kind of gave him problems. So I'm thinking at the NFL level, where he's seeing guys like the one you selected in the draft in the third round, and Tyre Phillips, that's 330 pounds, not 306 pounds. He's going to have a much harder time, disrupting those guys and uprooting them and disheveling those guys and displacing them. So I don't know if it necessarily carries over. One thing that will is his relentless motor and the violence that he plays with, but will you get the same results? I'm not sure about that. Lacks secondary rush when initial one is stalled. That would really aid him in being a better pass rusher if that initial swim or the initial bull rush didn't work, and then he decided, I'm going to spin. But he doesn't do that. If that initial, move doesn't work, that initial swim or that initial bull rush doesn't net him the results he's looking for, he just keeps trying, and at some point you got to realize this isn't working. I've got to do something else. And I don't think he ever really thinks about that. He just keeps trying. And again, it is what it is. I don't think he's going to be a huge difference maker as a pass rusher, but what he can do is help you somewhere that you struggled in the playoffs last year. And even in the regular season, there were times like against the 49ers where you gave it up on the ground. It really reared its ugly head against the Titans in the playoff game. You need help up front stopping a run. You go out and get Calais Campbell. You go out and you add Justin Madubuike. But this is the guy here, really, in Broderick Washington, that you're looking to really help you up front along the ground game. And I think he'll be able to do that in the 5th round, 170th overall selection in this draft. Defensive lineman, out of Texas Tech, Broderick Washington, for me, is a 3 for the Ravens in this draft. As we move on to the 6th round, and we look at SMU wide receiver James Proche with the 201st pick in the 6th round. 5'11", 201 pounds, 4.54 to 4.59 is the range I have his 40 at. We don't actually have a recorded timed speed for him. Did not run at the combine. I'm thinking he knew he wasn't going to blaze the combine, and that's fine. Some guys run away from that. He didn't know that the corona was going to hit the way that it did, and he wasn't going to actually get to put a time to his game tape, or else he would have run at the combine and just let the chips fall where they may. That being said, 111 receptions for 1,225 yards in 15 games, and 15 touchdowns in 13 games to go along with 17 punt returns for 164 yards and no scores. For his career, 301 grabs, 3,949 receiving yards, and 39 scores, to go along with 50 punt returns for 382 yards and no scores in 50 games. And also, just as an aside, there's also some kickoff return experience in there as well, but the numbers were so minuscule that I didn't bother putting them down. But there is some kickoff return experience there as well, so just throw that into the mix in all of the things that James Proche brings to the table. I had an early day 3 pick grade on James Proche. 4th, 5th round, no later than the 5th. You get him in the 6th, so to me this is extreme value back into the draft. Give you my comp for him a little bit later on, and you, if you're a Ravens fan, know this guy all too well that I'm going to give you a comp for. So if he turns out to be that guy, you'll love him. To me, highlight real hands is the first strength. This guy's catalog of catches that are just of the ridiculous and insane variety are through the roof. There's so many catches, whether you're talking one hand, you're talking him stretching away from his frame, you're talking about diving stabs, you name it, he did it at some point at SMU in some kind of way, shape, or form. Ridiculous. His hands are A1 legit. Some of the best focus, and concentration in this draft in terms of locating the ball and tracking it and making plays. Catching traffic, does that really well. Also, some of his best catches are contested catches. Guys draped all over him, and he extends with one hand. There's a game-winning score in the game against Tulane, I believe it was. Tulsa. It was Tulsa in the third overtime. I'm watching this game, and he's got a guy draped all over him, able to secure the football as he's backing up out of bounds, initially ruled incomplete. He gets a foot down as he's got a defender face guarding him, somehow holds on to the football through the contact of the ground. They overturn the incomplete call, rule it a catch, game-winning score, game, set, match, everybody drive home safely. Those are the types of plays he makes, can catch it in traffic. Amazing catch radius for a smallish wideout. You generally don't see guys with his stature at 5'11", 201 pounds, being a guy that you could kind of just throw it anywhere, but this guy can go and get it, whether it's high, whether it's low, whether it's behind him. You know, this guy's going all over the place and stretching outside of his frame to go and get the football. So it's a tremendous catch radius for a guy that's a smallish wide receiver. He's a part of a very elusive and exclusive club. It's called the 50-50 Club, man. His ball tracking is insane. It's out of this world. And there aren't many guys that you just say, hey, look, 50-50 ball, go get it. That's 5'11". You know, we know a bunch of 6'3", 6'4" guys that you say, hey, man, go make a play for me, and you throw it up, and they can go get it for you. But he's a part of the 50-50 Club at 6 feet or shorter, and that's rare. You know, he's a rare member of the 50-50 Club at, 6 feet or shorter. And so this is a guy that you don't mind. Oh, I got singled up on the outside. Let me just throw it up and see what happens. Worst case scenario, James goes up, makes a play, and the defender makes a better play, and it's incomplete. But James, if I give James a shot, either he's coming down with it or nobody's coming down with it. Late reaction to the deep ball. I remember Joe Gibbs once upon a time, in Joe Gibbs 2.0, when he came back the second time to coach the Redskins. And he talked about what made Santana Moss such a great deep ball catcher down the field. And he said, the thing about guys that people don't realize is how late you react to the deep ball. A lot of times defenders are too scared. They shook. They cooked. They shook. A lot of these guys, man, they halfway crooks. They scared to death. They scared to look. So they ain't looking back for the football. They shook. So they're playing off of the body language, off of the eyes, off of the reaction of the receiver. And so a lot of times, like my high school coach would teach us, hey, react to the deep ball late. The later you react, the later that guy knows the ball is coming. Because a lot of times defenders aren't looking. And it was some of the best advice that you could give a guy in terms of tracking the deep ball, because the later you react, the later they get a chance to put their hands up and swipe at your arm and all that good jazz. And so he's one of those guys. He doesn't react until the ball is about to get there, and he's got such great reaction time. And so it's a late reaction, but it's quick, so he can make an adjustment to the football, and that defender simply can't. A solid route runner, creates leverage with his routes, does a great job of stair-stepping his routes as he gets up the field, sells the deep ball to come back to the underneath routes. So a lot of times guys don't want him running by. And it's not like he's got electrifying speed or anything, but he sells the deep ball so well that they turn their hips. And now all of a sudden he's coming back 12 back to 10, 15 back to 12, 14 back to 12. So he does a really good job of selling the deep ball to come back to an underneath route. Special teams value, I talked about that as a punt returner and a kickoff return. If you want sure hands, not necessarily the most dynamic guy, but you want sure hands back there, James Proche is the man for the job. Ridiculous production. I gave you the numbers, man. Over 300 grabs in his career for over damn near 4,000 yards, almost 40 touchdowns. But just in 2019 alone, 111 grabs, tied for the most in college football in 2019 with Justin Jefferson. Is it Justin? It's not Justin Jefferson. It's Jefferson. God damn it, I can't remember his first name. I don't know why I'm blanking. I think Justin's his brother that played at LSU. So many of those damn Jefferson boys. Anyway, 1,225 receiving yards and 15 scores in just 13 games. So ridiculous production. I get it. You know, he played in a conference where points were being handed out, you know, like raffle tickets. You know, they were just giving these out. And so I get it. You know, not a lot of defense in the AAC. But at the end of the day, he put up huge numbers. And that production cannot be ignored as we get to his weaknesses. Doesn't possess elite speed, quickness, or agility. And I think that's why he falls in this draft. I think a lot of people, look at his size and they say, okay, well, let's just kick him inside to the slot because he's 5'11". Why? You know, Antonio Brown wasn't 6'3". He was 5'11", 5'10", 5'11" was Antonio Brown. Putting guys in the washing machine, in the dryer, in the cycle, and wringing dudes out dry. You know, I mean, you can play outside at 5'11" if you have the skills to do it. But that's the natural inclination is, south of 6 feet, stick him in the slot. He'll be fine. Well, he didn't have elite quickness or elite speed or elite agility. So everyone says, well, if I can't stick him in the slot, what am I going to do with him? Which is the next weakness. Where is his cleanest positional fit? Slot or outside, out wide? To me, I've told you this. I err on the side of let me see what a guy can do before I say what he can't do. And if everyone's telling me you can't play tackle, you got to be kicked inside the guard, well, let me see. Let me see with my own two eyes. I'm going to stick you at tackle. I see that you can't play tackle. Okay, I'm going to kick you inside the guard. They were right. You got to play guard. But, you know, until you prove it to me that you can't, I'm going to give you every chance to prove that you can. And so why can't he play outside? Why can't he play out wide? He does most of his damage out there. He makes these ridiculous acrobatic catches. You tell me he's not fast enough, not quick enough to play in the slot. Okay, well, let him play outside then. Lots of free releases and hops to set up routes. You know, that's something I'd like to see him clean up. A lot of hopping to try to set up his routes. And you got a lot of free releases at SMU. You know, you're not going to necessarily, especially if I'm not threatened by your speed. Oh, man, I'm coming up in your face, deleting the airspace, man. I'm going to lay hands on you. I'm going to baptize you at the line of scrimmage. You're going to feel like a new man after this ball is snapped because I'm going to lay hands on you. So I just don't know if he's going to see those free releases or if you're going to have to send him into motion and use stack formations to get him free. But he doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to be able to get off the jam very easily. So we'll see. But above all else, this isn't a weakness. This is a question that I have. And I think this is what people need to really take into consideration. When you talk about James Proche, this is what you need to consider. Does the flash of the big time catches and the acrobatic plays, does the flash mask his deficiencies or his substance? If you're low on James Proche and you think he's a 6th or a 7th round guy, then you're thinking the flash, it's really masking his deficiencies. He's not fast. He's not quick. He doesn't have agility. You can't put him in the slot. You can't put him out wide. He's not fast enough. You know, he doesn't have a clean positional fit. So you're thinking the flash is blinding people and they're really masking all of these deficiencies. For me, I'm saying the flash is really overtaking this substance. This guy put up numbers in college. This guy has a unique set of skills that he brings to the table, which is why I had a 4th or 5th round grade on him. Yeah, he's not going to be electrifying in the department of speed. And no, he's not breaking dudes off. But at the end of the day, this guy has it. Whatever it is, he has it at the receiver position. And for me, that counts a lot more than the guy that can run really, really fast in a straight line. Give me the guy that I know I can throw it up to, and he's going to make a play for me. Give me the guy that on 3rd and 7, I'm going to throw him the football, and he's going to get me 8. And to me, James Proche is that guy. For whatever reason, the numbers speak for themselves. I just feel confident that James Proche is a guy that I can throw it to in any situation and feel confident. And I feel like he could play out wide. And so with all that being said, in the 6th round, 201st pick overall, wide receiver out of SMU, James Proche for me is a 4. I think this is tremendous value getting him in the 6th. I had a 4th round, latest he should go as 5th, but the earliest he could have gone 4th. I thought he was more of a 4th round pick than a 5th round pick because of the production and his ability. And somehow everyone allows the whole speed narrative and the lack of quickness, no clean positional fit, all this nonsense to kind of cloud their judgment on all the production that's in front of your face. Give me James Proche. And my comp for him is Derek Mason. Remember how tough Derek Mason? Derek Mason wasn't a big guy. Derek Mason did play in the slot, but Derek Mason also played out wide too in Tennessee. But Derek Mason could play out wide. He could play in the slot. Derek Mason was tough as nails, caught everything that was thrown his way. I see the same thing out of James Proche. So we'll see what happens with him. But I love this selection for the Baltimore Ravens. As we wrap up this Ravens draft in the 7th round, you see how they did that? 1 7th round pick. You know, meat of their draft, rounds 1 through 4, and then 1 in each of the last 3 rounds. That's how you do it, man. You're going to have 10 picks. Don't feed me a bunch of 7th and 6th round picks, man. That's some empty calories. Don't feed me that shit. You want to fill me up and I want to feel like I had a good hearty meal that's going to stick to my ribs? Feed me 3rd and 4th round picks. Let me eat those until I start throwing up 4th and 3rd and 4th rounders. Anyway, 7th round, 219th selection, defensive back out of Iowa, Geno Stone is the selection. 5'10", 207 pounds, 4'6", 240, 3 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 3 forced fumbles, 4 pass breakups, 1 interception in 13 games in 2019. For his career, 4 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 4 forced fumbles, 7 pass breakups, 6 INTs, and a pick 6 to go along with that in 38 games. Had a late day 3 grade on him, 6th round, 7th round. Didn't make me any bit of difference where you took him, as long as it was somewhere in that general vicinity. You take him in the 7th round. I'll give you my comp for him a little bit later on, but his strengths, really good closing burst. You see this guy really come downhill and strike. He fills the rushing lanes really well and fills them with intent. Will come downhill and strike. There's a great play against Michigan. I want to say it was Michigan. It might have been USC. I get some of these games mixed up sometimes. I think it was Michigan, though. I'm pretty sure it was against Michigan. They try to set up a wide receiver screen. Receiver comes in motion, and Geno Stone's watching him, but he's about good 20 yards off the line of scrimmage. And the tight end and the receiver that's already out wide, they come off the ball, and they both block. And now the receiver kind of comes in motion, and they throw it to him. And Geno Stone comes out of nowhere like a banshee screaming out of hell. Ah! Lights him up before he can even turn around and get it started, man. That kind of closing speed gets you excited. High football IQ, man. Understands route concepts and what the offense is looking to accomplish. He had a great pick against Michigan where they try to run a high-low concept against him. And, you know, again, a lot of guys that aren't smart, that don't understand what the offense is doing, they bite the bait. They bite the eye candy of underneath receiver. But guess what? If it's 3rd and 13, if it's 3rd and 12, if it's 3rd and 9, guess what they want to do? Look, I will give you the 4-yard completion, and I'm rallying up, and I'm coming to make a tackle. I want you to throw it there. All right? I want you to turn down the route behind me. All right? Because if I come up and react to color in front of me, you're going to throw the ball behind me for the first down. But a lot of guys don't understand what defenses or offenses are trying to do to them. And so they come up, they react to that color. Geno Stone's like, nah, you can have that, man. So they try to run this concept where you got an out and you got a corner behind it, or a bench route behind it. And Geno Stone plays it beautifully. He splits the difference, and he's sagging underneath, and he's really falling underneath that bench route. And Shea Patterson thinks he can fit it over him, and Geno Stone's simply not going for it, picks it off. It's a beautiful play, and it's just a great example of his high football IQ, him understanding what they were trying to do to him, high-low concept, read it, beautifully made a play. Ball skills and instincts. He's one of those guys that absolutely sees it before it happens. Can't always get there. We'll talk about that here shortly, but he's got the ball skills and the instincts that win at the next level. I got a great comp for him a little bit later on. Blitzing capabilities. This is a guy, I want to see him blitz more. I watched him blitz in one game, and I said, man, that was pretty damn impressive, but they just didn't give him many opportunities to do so. I'd like to see him blitz a little bit more, because I talked about the closing speed. You get this guy unblocked, unmolested, you scheme up a blitz where he's not touched, he's going to get to that quarterback in a hurry. So I'd like to see them I'd like to see him get more opportunities in that capacity. Weaknesses. Lacks the elite speed and juice teams covet at the safety position. So What Iowa did, and they did a really good job of this, is they didn't put him in compromising situations. They knew Geno Stone wasn't built to be a single high free safety, so they never put him in those situations. They didn't put him in cover one and leave him back there on an island. They didn't put him in cover three and say, hey, you got a third of the field. They said, look, you're a split safety. We're going to have you take one half of the field, and we're going to have your partner in crime back here take the other half of the field. And made things a lot easier for him. And I can tell you this much. He lacks the juice that teams are looking for. And sometimes it sucks because he sees it. And I talked about this earlier with Patrick Queen. And I talk about it with safeties all the time. That's why I loved Xavier McKinney out of Alabama, because he sees it and he's got enough juice to get there and do something about it. Geno Stone sees it, and sometimes he just doesn't have enough juice to do anything about it. But when you're that smart, you make up for a lack of speed and quickness with your instincts. And so sometimes you still beat the ball there and make plays. And I think he's one of those guys that's going to be able to do that at the next level. More of a split safety or an underneath defender than a single high or a slot ball hawk. So you don't want to put him in man-to-man. He doesn't have the fluidity, the flip, doesn't have oily hips. Oily hips. Doesn't have oily hips. His hips are tight. And so he doesn't have the speed or the quickness to stay with guys in man-to-man coverage. But what he does have is the ability to be smart as an underneath defender. He's a robber underneath, eyeing and keying the eyes of the quarterback and making a play. He's a guy that you put in a cover two situation or a man two over the top. He's a guy that can do some of those things and really help you because of his instincts. So I see a lot of Tony Jefferson in him. You guys know him all too well. Former Ravens safety, played his best ball in Arizona, but you got a little taste of what good Tony looked like his first year in Baltimore. Remember, Tony Jefferson wasn't the fastest guy, wasn't the biggest guy, similar size, ran like a 4.8 at the combine, but came in the league, smart defender. He got it and ended up making some plays and making a name for himself. And I see Geno Stone as a late round draft pick with the same kind of DNA makeup as a Tony Jefferson, with a chance to come in and potentially make the back end of a roster. And then as time progresses, gets an opportunity to get on the field and makes the most of his opportunity. We shall see. But in the 7th round, Geno Stone for me is a 3 to wrap up this Ravens draft. And what a draft it was, man. 5s, 4s, and 3s across the board. That's big time numbers for Eric DeCosta and company. And now you see why they were high-fiving or throwing beverages over the fence and toasting to what was a hell of a draft, because it was. And I'm anxious to see this draft on the field. But what it amounts to is a 3.8 when it's all said and done. And if you're looking for the grading rubric, it's down in the description of this video. So check that out. You'll see the full breakdown of the Ravens draft there. But when you total it up, 38 points divided by the amount of picks, 10, nets you a 3.8, which amounts to a B+ draft for the Baltimore Ravens. Can't do it much better than that. It's hard to get an A with this grading scale, and I made it that way. But they came dangerously close with the amount of really quality picks that they put forth in the 2020 NFL Draft. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Make sure you subscribe to the Louie T Network if you haven't already done so. What are you waiting on? Not only subscribe, turn on your notifications so you don't miss a thing. Speaking of not missing anything, you want to stay up on all the latest updates on the Louie T Network. Best way to do that is through my Instagram and my Twitter, at Louie T Network on Twitter, and on IG, Louie T Network _. Make sure you're following me on both platforms. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. If it's not your man T, it's not, I repeat, not the best NFL coverage it could be. Until next time, you guys, stay safe. We will reconvene. Have a good one. Take care. Louie T Network.